8 years have passed since the boy was torn from the lion's side, and still the wind carries the scent of that final cry. The desert buried their story beneath storms and silence, but memory does not rot in sand. It grows heavy in the chest like breath held too long, and now in the dead of night when the world has forgotten and the child sleeps unaware, something ancient drags itself from the dark, not out of rage, not out of hunger, but out of something deeper. A bond forged in blood and dust and ripped apart too soon, a soundless pull across time, across pain, across the space where language fails, but the heart still speaks, because even after years of absence and wounds that never closed, some ties do not fade. They wait, they ache, they return. By day he moves like any other man. Quiet measured hands tending to the small needs of life, drawing water, fixing walls, murmuring stories to his son that trail off before the endings ever come. And though his eyes rest gently on the boy, his gaze often drifts just beyond him to something not there. The way his hand lingers on the doorframe carved with old claw marks, as if expecting the sound of paws at dusk and at night. When the wind sighs low through the cracks, he lies awake beneath a patchwork sky, listening not for danger, but for a breath, a presence, a weight beside him that once was and now is not, and far from the hut. Across the scorched silence, another figure stirs, dragging itself across sand, with a slow persistence, eyes cloudy, but always, searching ears, catching phantom echoes of laughter and low voices carried by memory, both of them living as though whole but held together by threads, pulled tight with absence, and though neither speaks of what was, their days are shaped by it in every pause, every glance, every silence too long to be empty. It happened too fast. The dust, the shouting, the sudden tear in the world, as soldiers stormed the village and the boy's fingers slipped from the lion's fur. Kavi screamed, reaching back eyes wide with fear, but the truck kept moving, metal drowning out everything except the sight of Ammar running limping, confused until the distance swallowed him and the sound of his roar vanished beneath engines and fire. And from that moment, something vital unraveled. In both of them, Kavi no longer ran barefoot or laughed without thinking his world shrank to the space between footsteps and glances over his shoulder, carrying a silence too heavy for his small frame. He learned to survive but forgot how to feel Ammar. Left behind, circled the edges of the burned huts until his paws bled. His cries unanswered, his scent of home lost in ash, and later in the snare that tore through his legs. The pain became part of him, not just in flesh, but in spirit. And so he moved, through the world like a ghost, the brightness in his eyes fading each year, replaced by a distant, dull watchfulness. Both of them marked by absent strangers to the present, haunted by a presence that once meant everything, and the silence between them. Stretched into seasons, then into years, and still it did not break. Let me pause here for just a moment, and now I want to ask you, where are you listening from right now? Has there ever been someone in your life, a person, or even an animal, who remembered you after years apart? Maybe it was a look, a gesture, a quiet knowing that said, I never forgot you. If that touched something in you, share it in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if these kinds of quiet, powerful moments speak to your heart, make sure to follow. There's so much more ahead. It started with a sound too soft to notice a laugh high, and light carried by wind, and for a moment, Ammar stopped the slow drag of his body through the dunes. Something in that sound pulled at a buried place deep behind years of ache and silence. He lifted his head. The scent struck him next, faint but achingly familiar. Not the boy, no, but close enough to fracture the wall he had built around memory. And somewhere between ribs and ribs, something old and aching began to stir. Not hunger, not fear, but a need so deep, it felt like pain. The lion turned not toward shelter, but toward the sound dragging his broken weight across the night with no plan, only a pull. Meanwhile, far in the hut, Kavi had seen it too. Not a sound, not a scent, but a flicker of light across an old photograph found beneath a pile of forgotten clothes. His son had held it up, smiling. Who's this Baba? And Kavi could not answer, because the face beside his own in that picture still haunted him, large, golden, eyes full of trust, of love, of something no war could erase, and for the first time in years, he let the memory in fully, let it wash over him. The days, the fire, the tearing, the silence, and now the child, the desert, the echo. Something is calling both of them from opposite ends of absence, the heart pounding with questions. Is it really possible? Could he still be out there? Would he remember me? And the fear is louder than hope, because hope requires courage to open old wounds. But even louder than fear is the need to know. And so Kavi rises at the same moment. Amar pushes through the last line of scrub, both drawn not by logic, but by something older than time. The stirring dust of what once was and might still be. The wind was still the kind that carries no sound, only heat and memory. The Cobra moved in silence, one fluid line of death, and the child didn't see it, too young to know what silence can mean, too innocent to fear it. But Amar saw, and something inside him broke free. Not with force, but with clarity, a final sharpness of purpose. He dragged himself forward every inch, screaming through torn muscle and old scars. Not with pain, but urgency. He moved, not like a beast, but like a promise. Kept, at the last moment, he reached the boy. The Cobra struck, but Amar was faster, not fast enough to live, but fast enough to save. He crushed the snake beneath what strength remained, then collapsed beside the child, breathing shallow heat pressing into his fur. But it wasn't the pain he felt, it was him. The scent, the closeness, and the face turned toward him, eyes wide and round and so familiar. Not the same boy, but the same gaze, and in that gaze recognition began like the first crack of water across dry earth. Amar looked deeper and knew this was Kavi's blood, his breath, his echo, and even as his vision blurred, he stayed very still, wanting to hold on to this moment, and then he heard it. The sound of feet running, and then stopping, the sound of breath being torn from a chest, and a single word, breaking the air, not screamed, not panicked, but raw and trembling. Amar. And the lion turned his head just barely, and through dimming sight, saw him. The boy, now a man, eyes glassed over, lips parted as if trying to remember how to breathe, and the space between them vanished because the years didn't matter. The pain didn't matter. Only this. Only this knowing, and in that instant time folded Amar's eyes closed, but not in fear, not in surrender, only in peace, because the voice that once said, "I'll come," back had finally kept its word. In the days that follow, Kavi walks slower, not from sorrow, but from the weight that has finally lifted. He touches the old claw marks on the doorframe now with reverence, not ache. And when his son runs barefoot through the dust, Kavi smiles not with fear, but memory. They sit together beneath the same torn sky, where once silence lived, and now a voice returns in stories spoken low, the kind that come from the chest, not the tongue. His son listens wide-eyed sometimes, reaching out to touch the edge of Kavi's sleeve just to feel the nearness, as if to say, "I'm here. I hear you," and Kavi lets him. Amar's resting place is marked not with stone, but with quiet presence. A spot of shade where the wind moves differently, where the boy sometimes leaves a toy or a piece of bread without knowing why, just knowing it feels right. And in the small things, the world begins again. Laughter returns not all at once, but in short bursts, like birds returning after fire. And one evening, as Kavi hums a song he thought he'd forgotten, the boy curls into his side, rests his head, and says softly, "I think he knew me," and Kavi feels his throat close, not with grief, but with something fuller. Because yes, he did. He always did. And that knowing becomes the heartbeat of their days. It moves with them, not loudly, not proudly, but constantly, like breath, like warmth, like something that was broken and is no longer, because some bonds are stronger than distance, deeper than pain. And when they return, they do not ask for anything, they simply stay. Some connections do not fade with time. They do not bend beneath silence or break under distance. They live quietly beneath the surface, waiting not to be remembered, but to be felt. Again, and when they return, they ask for nothing, only to be seen, to be known, to be allowed back. In this was never just a reunion. It was a return to something true, a part of themselves, long buried, now breathing again. Kavi no longer looks back with pain, but with peace. And the boy now carries more than stories. He carries a legacy of love that endured without needing to speak. Because real bonds do not vanish. They wait, they protect, and when the moment is right, they come home. And in their quiet return, they remind us that nothing truly given from the heart is ever lost, only waiting to be found again.